Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Megan Lestino, Vice President of Public Policy and Education at National Council for Adoption. We are so pleased to have you with us today for Fostering Hope. It's an opportunity to chat with and learn from our Babineaux Award recipient. I have with me today Sixto Cancel. Sixto, welcome.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
I'm going to give us some quick introduction material first, and then I hope to spend most of the time listening and chatting with Sixto and learning from him. I know there's going to be great info provided for everyone today. I'm excited for our chat and appreciate the time and interest of all of you who are joining us live and everyone who will listen to this recording later. We appreciate your commitment to learning more about how you can make a difference for youth in foster care. This live stream is, as I said, being recorded, so if you enjoy it and would like to share the opportunity with a friend, please do. It'll be available on our website at adoptioncouncil.org. NCFA also runs educational webinars year-round, so feel free to check in and learn more about those on our website anytime. We have a three-part series on communications coming up in July, and even sooner, on June 16th, we have an employment law expert who will help us better understand some changing nonprofit management issues. Feel free to check in on our website for lots more details on both of those things. And in just a minute, we will dive into today's conversation, but before we get to the good stuff, I have just a few housekeeping items to make sure everybody has the best possible experience. First, while we highly recommend the expertise of our speakers, any views or opinions expressed in this webinar belong to their speaker and don't necessarily represent NCFA. And in order to ensure good sound quality for everyone, we have muted everyone but our presenters today. But there are other ways you can communicate with us, and we hope you'll use them. In the bottom left corner of your screen is a chat feature. If you have any questions, comments, needs along the way, feel free to just send those to us there. Next, we are going to hold questions until the end of our chat today, but have saved about 10 minutes for them as we wrap up, so feel free to send those along the way. We don't want you to forget the good ones. So in that same bottom left corner, you can submit questions for Sixto or about how you can engage more in foster care. Anything that comes up along the way, we'd love to hear from you. Last, if you're having any concerns with sound quality, for some people, phone sound is more reliable than the computer. If you go to the top center of the page, the left icon will say phone or audio, and you can click that and it will prompt you with a phone number to dial in that way if that's more convenient. All right, all that said, we will jump ahead here, and I want to first say Happy National Foster Care Month. I'm sure that many of you are professionals, advocates, foster parents, foster youth, and have had a little extra activity in your month. And we want to thank you for whatever ways you've celebrated that, because we know how very important it is to raise awareness about the needs and about the great work already being done in foster care. So happy National Foster Care Month. We are glad to be with you celebrating today on the last day of it. The next thing I want to talk to you about, and the reason we're all here today, is the Warren and Mary Alice Babineaux Award. The Babineaux Award honors individuals and organizations that have gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure children experience love and stability that comes with a forever family. It's given to those who've demonstrated selfless commitment to providing resources, education, and leadership to address the many challenges facing the youth in foster care, and to help whenever possible to give children safe, stable, and loving adoptive families. This award acknowledges dedicated efforts of those who've generously given time, talents, and resources to ensure all children have a better experience in foster care and to encourage loving forever families. The award is named for Warren and Mary Alice Babineaux, who cared for more than 100 children in foster care during their decades-long tenure as foster and adoptive parents in Louisiana. And our award recipients are always those who have made notable achievements in establishing or implementing best practices for finding permanent families for children who are awaiting adoption out of foster care. They've made a commitment to generating increased awareness and support for finding families for children in foster care, and they've shown incredible leadership that positively impacts and will continue to provide positive change for children in care waiting for families. And as I said, we have with us today Sixto Cancel. He is one of our Babineaux Award recipients this year. Our second is Nicole Marchman, and you'll see her there. Unfortunately, Nicole at the last minute was not able to join us because of a personal medical emergency. Our warm thoughts go out to Nicole today, and we hope that all works out well for her. I'm going to take just a few minutes to share a little bit about the amazing things Nicole has done before Sixto and I dig in a little deeper and talk more about the great work he's doing and how he came to be involved in it. So Nicole is a just resilient and outstanding young woman. She is a foster care alum herself. She survived traumas resulting from sexual and physical abuse, domestic violence, and just the inherent instability of the foster care system. However, she was determined not to let her past and her experiences define her future. She found her voice, and her courageous and inspiring message has helped encourage and bring amazing change for a variety of trauma survivors. She works with youth in foster care, and she works with women and men facing domestic violence concerns to help them work through the trauma and hardship of physical abuse. She does that work through the None Lost Movement Ministry. It's an organization Nicole founded, but it is a group of abuse survivors who work together to ensure victims no longer feel isolated and alone in the midst of their pain. They offer education, awareness, public speaking, and healing to children and young people ages 4 and up, and they do it by speaking at conferences, providing counseling services, and other outreach services in the Tampa Bay area. You can also learn much, much more about Nicole in the extraordinary book she wrote about her story called Unbreakable Spirit Arises, From Broken Girl to Resilient Woman. And she also served and passionately advocated as a foster youth intern with the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institutes. And lastly, but by no means least, Nicole is now giving back to the foster care system as a foster parent herself. She is fostering young boys who've been in her care a while now, and she is in the process of seeking to adopt them. So Nicole is really extraordinary. We are sad that she is having a rough day and can't be with us today, but we're so grateful to have Sixto with us. And Sixto, I am going to jump over here to just say a very brief intro of you, but mostly I want to talk to you and let you intro yourself. Sixto is an extraordinary young man who started engaging and making positive change in foster care before he was even out of the foster care system himself. In his teenage years, he worked to help provide support and advocate for better laws for kids. Very recently, last week, he worked and created a hackathon with the White House Foster Care and Technology Committee. They did really extraordinary work for raising awareness for foster care and bringing better technology and resources. But he will be much better at explaining that than I will. But Sixto, if you don't mind, I'd love to start at the beginning of your story. Can you tell us about your foster care experience and how it is you found yourself in foster care?
Absolutely. I think, just like many other young people who've been in foster care, they're the typical things that lead you to be in care. Either, you experienced abuse or you were neglected, or something happened where your parents weren't able, or your care provider, your original care provider wasn't able to provide some care, right? And so I entered foster care at 11 months. By the age of 6, I was then placed with my biological mother. At 7, I re-entered foster care. By the age of 9, I was adopted, and it was unfortunately a very abusive adoption. So by 13, I was couch surfing and staying at friends' houses until I was 15 when I re-entered foster care and then aged out.
Wow, so you had a really diverse experience there. Can you tell us what inspired you to get more involved in making change for foster care? Because you did that at a really young age, didn't you?
Yeah, so I started doing a lot of the advocacy at 15, and it really started off because I had something to say, right? Like, and it had nothing to do with, I want to become an advocate and this is what I stand for. But while I was in care, I was involved with the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and it was there, that I started to learn the concept of being able to speak up and really being able to put your opinions out there and make change happen. And so I went from being a member to state treasurer of the Youth and College Division with 13 branches that I had supervised in Connecticut. And so we did a lot of different type of advocacy, and this was right around when the Sean Bell shooting had happened. And so there was a lot of momentum in terms of really saying, let's stand up for our rights, let's really get involved. And then those skill sets that I learned there transitioned right over to foster care, because the whole reason I had joined the NAACP in the beginning was because I had experienced what it meant to live with someone who was really racist, right? And so my adoptive mother who was incentivized for other reasons to adopt, and therefore and had her own prejudice that she lived with. So that's how I got involved with the youth board, and then from there it just continued to spiral.
Oh, that's so great. I'm so sorry that you had a hard adoption story. That's never how things should happen, but you have been really extraordinary in making the best of it. Tell me about what it is you did specifically to advocate for foster care after getting more involved through NAACP.
So I joined the youth board, the Department of Children and Families Youth Advisory Board, a voice to be heard. The longest title. I think we'll get an award for that one. But the first thing we met with the commissioner every 3 months, and one of the most unique things that I remember was really advocating for young people to be able to have a say in what type of deodorant and personal hygiene products we wanted, right? And so that was one big initiative that we were able to bring forward. The other one was we were able to help Voices for Children by providing our stories and supporting them with testifying around the siblings bill, the right to be able to actually see our siblings on a weekly basis. And so those are some of the things that we were able to really do as a youth board. But one of the things I look back at, and I really wish that we had, was more folks like your organization and other organizations providing us with training as a youth board, because there were things that we spent so much time on. For example, we had really pushed for a while on getting stipends directly to foster youth, right? But if we would have understood that the way the system's financed and all the complexities and administrative stuff that has to happen for something of that magnitude to happen, then I think the strategy for us would have been like, hey, how can we ensure that young people are just getting the products that they need, right? Like, how are we ensuring that foster parents are really providing youth with meaningful, clothing to them, And so there were other ways that we could have tried to solve that problem. But the thing is, like, when you're 15 and 16, you just don't know better. And most of the time we're in survival mode. But yet we have this extraordinary opportunity to be able to advocate and talk to high officials from the central office down to administrative folks on your local level.
Yeah, and you guys did extraordinary work with that siblings bill. Can you tell us about the outcomes of that and how that worked out for you?
So for me, it was, when we started that bill, I was probably about like 15. It did not get passed until very recently. I'm 24 now. So it's been 9 years since I, joined the youth board, and it was about like 2-3 years ago that it passed. So you can see it took a while, and so I never really got to feel the outcome of that bill. but the bill requires that, young people are able to actually see each other, sibling sets are able to see each other on a weekly basis. And so to the point that it's been implemented, I'm not completely aware of, and I'm pretty sure, there's always things to improve and there's always things to look at, but I haven't been involved in Connecticut's state reforms recently.
Yeah, and that makes total sense because you've been very busy with Think of Us lately. My understanding is that bill has been passed and is in the process of being implemented to various extents, but it definitely raised a huge amount of awareness in your state, in Connecticut, and in other states where they realized the huge importance of that. So thank you for that hugely important work, because although unfortunately you weren't there to see it impacted, legislation sure does move slow sometimes. We know that it will make a big difference for other kids who come after you.
Absolutely.
If you would, I would love to hear more about what the mission of Think of Us is and why you started along that path.
Absolutely. So the mission of Think of Us is to leverage data, technology, and multimedia to influence and improve the policy practice and the outcomes of young people and family. And when I say, we use data and we use technology, what we realize is that there's this opportunity in our infrastructure of how we do business, right? Like how we serve families, how we serve young people, how do states get reimbursed for services that they provide, how they report out information. There is a way that things happen right now, and it is very similar to pre-electricity eras, right? So like we're trying to build skyscrapers without electric tools, and although it can be achievable, I mean, because the Great Pyramids were built, it's going to take a hell of a lot of time, and in the process, there's young people who suffer because of it, and there's families who suffer because of it. And what we realize is that young people don't have the tools to navigate the experiences that they're going through. The workforce does not have adequate enough tools to be able to really spend the time that they need to working with young people. And in fact, that the software and tools that the that the workforce is using is promoting risk-averse behavior, for the system to be risk-averse. It's promoting, other practices where it allows the state to just think about what are the 5 things within these check boxes, and if it's not in that drop-down list, then we move on. And so what we believe is that all the tools that young people, foster parents, adopted parents, biological parents, the system itself, that these tools should be designed in such a way that maximizes the developmental opportunity that's in front of them. So whether you're working with adolescents and that software is helping young people build their skills, or whether you're working with workers who are on the front lines to figure out how they can become even more trauma informed or really navigate through a situation, connect anonymously to other workers who've been through these situations, right? So that the software should be designed to develop. It should also be designed to maximize well-being and to embed people within a social network. And what we see today is a tool that does not do that. When we look at our case management systems, when we look at the software that we're using to serve young people, it is far behind many other industries. And I hate to make this comparison, but I have to put this in perspective that farmers in the Midwest have even more robust case management systems to really keep track of their cattle and what vaccines that they have had and so on than what we have in certain counties in this country. And that's just ethically wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And your passion shines through as you explain that. And what I know is that passion doesn't just know that's a problem, but you are working hard at solving it. Can you tell us about some of the tools and resources Think of Us makes available to resolve those issues?
Absolutely. So what we're working on right now is called Unify. And Unify is a coaching app that helps young people accomplish their goals. And these goals correlate to the case plan, correlate to the transition plan. And what it really does is it focuses on how can a young person open up an application, create a goal, and that goal for every single goal that they create, they actually attach some of their supportive networks to it. So whether that's an adult from the system or an adult from their personal lives, they get to pick adults who they want to help them with a specific goal, and they make teams around the different goals. And it's all within the application. And then they start to they get to set a bunch of action steps. And the adults get to support, provide feedback, have discussion, provide resources, provide different things like, hey, come do laundry at my house before your interview. Whatever it may be for that young person to accomplish that goal, there's a whole network of people who rally behind that goal. And the young person is the person who can begin to choose those people and attach people to that goal so that each goal has a different team. And that's where we really start to do some of our permanency work. So when we think of permanency, we think of families and in addition to families, embedding young people within a network of adults that they have identified as their lifelong connection. So to this point, a lot of times we think of permanency as a forever family. I believe it's forever family plus supportive adults who are there too. Just like when you're in a family that has not experienced any involvement from systems, you have your core biological family, and your biological family offers different social capital around the table, right? So whether that's church folks, friends from the sports that the young people play, there's always other adults in our lives, and that's one thing that we tend to sometimes miss when we start thinking about how we should be approaching permanency. And so in our application, what we've learned is that when you ask a young person who's your supportive adult, that sometimes that question is a little difficult to answer. But when you ask a young person who will drive you around for 3 hours, who will help you write your resume, who will go ahead and make sure that you have the right type of clothing for school, that you then get to get a few more names. And the system has an opportunity to be able to collect those names via our platform with the young person's permission to then really become permanency leads. Because these are adults that the young person has identified who have been with them, who they feel supported by. And so when I look at my own experience between the 6th grade and the end of high school, I had about 15 different adults that came in and out of my life through that time who were very supportive. Whether that meant I was spending holidays with them, they were buying me my school uniform, or I was just hanging out. These were adults who went above and beyond what other supportive adults did. But yet, not one of those 15 adults ever made it into my case plan. There was never a case note about them, right? And so what we're trying to do is through our application, help young people identify those adults, let them be part of the goal setting, but even take it a step farther to say, is this a potential resource? Is this someone who should be at these case planning meetings? Is this someone that maybe the foster parent can have a conversation about some of the things that they're struggling through with this young person, right? So there's this opportunity that we are missing as a system and folks who are really on this mission that we really could be incorporating. And so to me, we look at this as our WISA initiative. It's like Visa, V-I-S-A, but instead of the V, we put Y, Youth Identified Supportive Adults. And it's important that we're engaging those adults because those adults are already in young people's lives. They're in young people's lives when they age out. They're in young people's lives when they are adopted. And sometimes there can be a friction between those supportive adults and adults who are new to a young person's life. So making sure that those adults are in sync and they're complementing each other, and that we're focusing on the young person as the center of what needs to get done is one of the things that we've been piloting with our application and looking to further.
Yeah, and I think that's incredible and so necessary. I hear so often from youth that they have lost connections that were so valuable when they were forced to change foster home placements or change schools or other things, and they had people who were engaging in really meaningful ways. And I think you make an amazing point in saying that family is really important, but one of the reasons family is really important is because it comes with that broader network of support that you talk about. We sometimes call those communities of care, but we know that parents can rarely do it alone, and they shouldn't have to, because the diversity of support, of wisdom, of kindness and love that come from the broader community is also so important. And you are doing just extraordinary work with Unify to help get that into the hands of the youth who really need it most, because they don't have that family permanency always, or not right away, to help them build those networks. So you had kind of a big event last week, I hear. Would you tell us a little bit more about how that came to be and what you did?
Absolutely. So last week we had the White House Foster Care and Technology Hackathon, but this was not a usual hackathon. And just so a traditional hackathon is where folks usually who develop applications, software, and different types of technology like text messaging systems, etc., come together and they spend 24 hours to 48 hours actually building something. So they get into the room. There's a problem statement, and the problem statement is given by any type of expert in the field. And they said, this is our problem. And then within a very short time, people work all night, all day without breaks. Well, some take breaks, but not going to sleep, should I say, and create something. And creates a proof of concept sometimes, creates a functional prototype, or actually full-on actual application that can be launched. And so an example is a few years ago, New York opened up all their data and said, we want an application that will tell folks when the subway's coming and what's the pattern of the subways, right? It's something that when they put out to bid, people, these large companies were telling them that it was going to take 3 to 5 years to build this and to go through the data and all of this other stuff. But there is this group of developers out there, people who write software and code and program, who have this entrepreneurship spirit and this problem-solving spirit, and they want to solve issues, and they volunteer their time for 24 to 48 hours, and they work with 50, 70 people all on the same project, just really hacking away. And when I say hacking away, nothing illegal, really meaning that, they're building something, and then at the end of it, they come out with a product.
Sure.
And so what our hackathon did was we invited several teams to look at several different issues. So from, substance abuse to pregnant and parenting teens to housing, legal documents for young people in their digital locker when they're aging out, right? And we've invited teams, Uber, Slack, Twilio, some of the leading Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 tech companies to be able to come to the White House and really hack on our issues, who had no idea of what happened in foster care. And so a couple of my favorite things, they were all my favorite, but one of them is, Ask Amy, an application that allows, pregnant and parenting teens to find resources around parenting, but foster care specific resources, right? And it's this type of application that has a learning machine attached to it where it begins to learn, right? So you can correct it. And it begins to learn on its own without us having to change anything inside of it, what's correct and what's not correct, and what's helpful and what's not helpful, so that as more people use it, the more accurate and the more useful it becomes. So it may be that there's 15 different resources in your area, but all the young people in foster care only go to 3 of them because they happen to be youth-friendly and they happen to be accessible, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are the 3 that will pop up, right? And then we had another team that developed this application called Landmark, where folks can actually input real-time information of what resources are available mapped out on a map, so that young people can actually pull up their phone and say, what, I'm in need right now of a shelter, and this place has 3 beds.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so
it's extraordinary that was able to happen, and you guys were there 48 hours, is that right?
So we were there 2 days, but we were a little unfair to the team and to the hacking teams, because of course you can't have a child welfare convening without actually having some panels. And so
Sure.
We started the day off with but these panels were very useful. We started the day off by opening up with really framing the digital divide within our field. And when I say digital divide, I'm not talking just hardware, right? So people know the digital divide as we don't have enough people with smartphones, with laptops. The digital divide in our field consists of a lack of digital solutions. The fact that we don't have real-time information of what's going on with the young people who are in our care exactly at this point. right? We can't say, oh, X amount of kids right now are experiencing nightmares and flashback because we don't have the tools like other industries do right now to actually collect that. But it's not that they do not exist. And so part of that was framing the day. Then we went into the legal panel, which is you can't talk technology and you can't talk, putting tools in young people and foster parents' hands in the workforce without really talking about the legal and union issues, right? And so we had a dynamic panel from some of the top folks working who have law degrees or who've been working on this issue, and that's when we then got to be able to start the hackathon and actually building pieces together so that we started a movement. And so some of the outcomes, we wanted this to be more than an event. And so some of the biggest outcomes that came out of here is that the last time that the SACWIS system, and SACWIS is the automated system that is used by the feds and states report up information and counties report up information with what's going on with their young people, like how many moves, how many young people are in care, et cetera, was 23 years ago. 23 years ago, we didn't even have smartphones, right? Like Spectre and Gadget was still cool back then. And so
yeah.
And so like it was such a long time ago that today that system, those regulations were being a disservice to young people. And so Commissioner Lopez was able to really push hard with his team and his partners around the table to make this to be able to announce at the White House that, here are the new regulations that really present us a new future. Because now there's some regulations in there that have been deregulated. There's a lot of flexibility and a lot of innovation, and it's promoting agile procurement and agile development, which is the ability to say, let me not hire one big person to build a $60 million system, but let me spend half of that money actually building smaller parts and testing whether they work or not, and not being penalized for things that may not work. Because as we know, tech does not replace humans, and tech cannot be the end-all and solve all the problems. And so that was one. We had the Pritzker Foundation being able to announce $1 million fund to be able to fund. Yes, to be able to fund. Thank you. To be able to fund innovation between technology and child welfare related to transition age foster youth. We had Commissioner Lopez announce another additional $1 million to be able to support states and counties and systems in drawing down technical assistance for agile development and procuring procuring software in that method. We had Walter S. Johnson, along with the Pritzker Initiative, the Jeannie and Anthony Pritzker Foundation, actually announced that they're putting $250,000 immediately to buying laptops for young people, transition age young people in California, and over the next 3 years that they would be spending about $5 million to make sure that every young person in California who was who was in that transition group will have a laptop. And those are just some of the commitments. There's a lot more commitments that were made, and we will be writing an impact report to actually report those out. But there are about 20 hardcore commitments that are setting the tone for the movement is now, and we're getting ready to experience a new age.
That's extraordinary. I'm so excited to hear that things went so well last week, and I am so grateful to you for your passion in leading this. I know that you're in the midst of graduating from college, which is what a typical person would consider that busy enough, but meanwhile you are making amazing change with the White House, doing things that most, many generations older than you may never make that level of impact. So thank you so much for your passion and your just commitment of time and energy and resources. I know that you have worked tirelessly on this, and we're so grateful for the work you're doing and the network you're creating because of it. And one of the things that I am really inspired by is the fact that you really don't disconnect the tech from the human impact. Instead of using technology to replace, you are using it to connect people to one another. And we know that the science of connection is so important to child development, but really to all of us forever. Those people in our lives make an extraordinary difference. So thank you for keeping those of us who have no idea what tech needs to be done on our toes and teaching us all what needs to happen, but more importantly for not forgetting that that value of connection and using your extraordinary skills to embrace that. So I'm so looking forward to seeing your report from that hackathon, and I can't wait to see all the details. I'd love to hear a little bit about how others can help with foster care. And first, with your efforts specifically with Think of Us, are there things people can do to get involved to help raise awareness or specific hands-on tasks they can do? And then I'd love to hear your recommendations for other ways people might get involved and make change for youth in foster care. But tell us how people might help with Think of Us first.
I think the first thing, which helps the movement around technology and child welfare is for folks to have an open mind. For every step forward, we have gotten resistance around technology and child welfare, right? Like for some folks, it sounds cold, like it's computers are going to take over. Like we need families, not tech, and it's a yes and. We can have both of these things at the table. We're not saying give a young person a virtual family. That does not work. That technology should be used to unlock something. It shouldn't be a replication of bad practices within software, right? And so we have to learn how to develop technology to be part of the part of the services that are delivered by humans. The other thing is that we're about to launch, the opportunity for folks to be able to get involved and be part of our beta group to start testing some stuff, right? And so this might be a small self-coaching activity that's a quick activity that someone can do on their phone, right? Around getting an apartment. It may be something around how does this messaging sound? So we want to be able to have folks who can be very critical, and we can show we can be vulnerable enough to show like us in the mess, but yet be able to be solution focused to say, you know what, if you tweaked it this way a bit, this might look great, and to be able for us to engage in that way. So soon enough, we're going to be able to start asking people to be part of that beta group. And the way to be on there right now is to go to our website and actually sign up for our newsletter. And that will be able to, when we send out the blast of requesting people to be someone as one of those beta users, it will allow us to be able to reach out to you. And then some of the other ways that I feel like folks can get involved, I think when it comes down to being a supportive adult for a young person, like that's the number one thing you can do. And sometimes you never know how that small message is planted, and then you see that young person utilizing that message and that support that you provided to them, years later. And then the other thing is like really to continue to unify and to collaborate and to really work with folks. So beyond, I know some of the folks on this webinar are leading organizations, right? And so my message to those folks who are in the position to be able to collaborate is to collaborate authentically. Right. And then the second one to those is to either foster, mentor, get involved with a young person's life. Go to onesimplewish.org and you're able to see the amazing work to be able to contribute directly to a young person's need. And then the last message I really have for folks is that, we have reached a time in child welfare where folks need to either lead, follow, or get out the way. And if you have to fall into one of those three categories. If you're not in one of those three categories, then you might not be contributing much to the movement as much as you would have wanted to, right? And so that's a little bit of what I believe should be happening.
Those are great tips. And One Simple Wish is a fabulous organization. We have worked with them a little bit and love what they do. And here are just a few other ways we have suggested to be a change maker. I think you hit on some really key ones. Obviously, foster, adopt, mentor, provide rester care, tutor to be a CASA, but just like you said through Unify, adults in these kids' lives have a variety of skills, and everybody's good at something, whether that's making a really delicious meal for a foster family who has a lot of other things going on, or giving financially to help provide for specific needs. And one great way to do that is through One Simple Wish or other organizations that are county-based that know specifically of the desires of specific kids. Another great way to do that is just call the local office and say, what are the needs in my community and how can I engage, these are my skills. And they are usually more than willing to find a way for you to engage and be involved. You can also get more information about engaging in foster care at our website at adoptioncouncil.org/foster. And I'm going to talk just briefly about our Families for All efforts and the ways we're working to help better understand and do better work to support kids in care. One of the big projects we're working on is a research project that is going to assess the qualities and experiences of foster and adoptive families who are involved with the foster care system. So whether they are fostering and ultimately adopt, or whether they are only foster families, we're going to look at what are the qualities of parents that last, what are the resources that they need and help them to stay in the system, what are the things they feel are lacking, and look at what it would take to make sure that we are getting the best parents to these kids and helping get them the resources to serve kids best. And it sounds like some of those resources need to be technology. And I would love to talk to you more about that actually someday, Sixto, offline. We can dig into those details a little bit perhaps.
Sure.
Another thing you can do to make a difference for youth in care is advocate. Sixto talked about that siblings bill that he worked to help pass. One of the big bills that National Council for Adoption supports is the Supporting Adoptive Families Act and the Families First Act. And if you go to adoptioncouncil.org/foster, there's more information about those bills, but both are bills that provide more flexible and more diverse resources to provide support to kids who are in families and need therapeutic services or counseling services or any variety of special needs. And the goal there is to help encourage permanency. So we know that kids who are in families who receive better support and good services have better long-term outcomes. So helping to get flexible services, not just whatever is available, but the specific services that that child actually needs is really important. And those are some of the big picture goals around those bills. Another resource for adopting families or foster families is our financial resources page. If you go to adoptioncouncil.org and click under the resources tab, there's lots of great resources on how you can fundraise to support foster and adoption efforts. There's information about the adoption tax credit, on grants that can help provide financial support for adoption. Lots of great things there. There's also information about post-adoption support resources. So once a child is in care, we know, or in a family's care, we know that the goal isn't just to get them to a family, but to make sure that they thrive there. So there's some more support services and resources available there. And of course, always if you need support, you can email or call us at National Council for Adoption. We are glad to try and help connect you to what you need. Now I would love to just flip back over here and take some questions. I see that we've got a couple that have come in, but if anyone else has questions, we'd love to have those in the bottom left corner. You just enter them in that chat column and we'll be able to see them here and answer those for you. We have a couple here already though. The first, Sixto, is for you for sure. It is, what are some key principles to help educate foster youth about media literacy?
So Common Sense Media has a great curriculum around digital literacy and making sure that we're doing right to teach young people how to interact online. I think one of the biggest things I would say that's foster care specific. So everything that's in terms of principles and how it should be done, it's there, and they have it so that you're starting at the as a 9-year-old and 8-year-old level curriculum, right? But one of the things that's unique is that when you're in the system, so many people avoid you using these tools because they assess it as a risk to you. But the biggest risk is not actually allowing young people a safe environment to fail within when they do have these, because you need those learning moments. It's ridiculous to think that you are going to hand a cell phone to a young person at the age of, 18 or 19 or 20, and then think that, despite not having a cell phone, not having access to social media this whole entire time because it was restricted, that they're going to be able to know all the ins and outs of how to behave responsibly on it. Ridiculous. We need to be able to provide young people with the opportunity to have those healthy learning moments throughout it, so that as they get older and the risk increases, it's actually decreasing because people have been part of that healthy risk taking and being part of it. So I would say if there's one thing you can walk away with that's foster care specific, is making sure that young people have access, that you are able to have the conversation, because guess what? There will be things that will be posted that it's probably not the best thing to post. There will be situations where it's not going to make folks feel comfortable, but those are learning moments.
I think that's such a good point. We have expectations that youth will be responsible, and yet we don't have those same expectations or fears surrounding youth in family settings because they've had some boundaries and opportunities to experiment. And I think that's so important, is if we protect them from everything, there's no learning opportunities. You are, I think, just spot on there. I have another question from Emily. She said, you mentioned foster teens creating a support group of adults particular to their goals. If their goals shift as they age or go through the process of achieving goals, should their adult support team members change? Or is that sort of a static network?
So like when you think of goals, we all create goals, and there's 20 different types of goals if we want to get into the literature and the academics. And when we look at evidence-based frameworks like Anthony Grant's framework around goal-focused coaching, one of the things that we look at is that there's a good way to do goals and there's a really bad way to do goal setting. And some goal setting, like performance goals and avoidance goals, are actually linked to depression and a lower a lower performance rate at school. And I'll go ahead and put that link in this chat in a second so that you guys can get that research. But one of the things we know is that when we tell a young person, here, avoid going AWOL, that's the goal. Don't go AWOL. When we tell a young person, don't do this, that's actually linked to bad outcomes. But when a young person creates a goal, I'm not talking system goals here. I'm not talking, long-term adoption. I'm talking literally like, my goal in the next 2 weeks is to reconnect with my mother, or, my goal in a way that's healthy. I think I'm ready now. Or my goal may be like to improve my scores at school in English. Whatever goal a young person has, from mindfulness to some type of extracurricular activity to academics, these goals should be temporary and should be achievable within a shorter time frame, right? And some of them will be longer, but that's how you add up to the bigger vision. And so there will be different adults that will support each young person in those goals. And so we also have a feature where young people in the Unify app will be able to have like a Facebook wall where they're able to connect with all of their supporters so that they can be giving constant updates to everyone, versus just having their supportive adults engage in just one goal and then not hear from them for a couple of weeks or a month or two and then need them again, right? So like they're able to stay connected, and there's a lot more to the application, like a situation room where you can watch content from alumni to foster youth, very direct messages around like navigating the system and being open to, just the process that it is there. So yes, the supportive adults change, and just think of your own lives. Think about how you were close to people and peers, adults, your friends. You're close to folks for a year or 2 years, 3 years. Sometimes it shifts. Sometimes you get close again.
Yeah, that's spot on. One other question I had, about Unify is just, what have you done already to test this with youth? I know you're starting the beta testing process, but how did you come up with the ideas and feedback to sort of fine-tune it to the place it is now?
So there's a process called human-centered design, and human-centered design is by IDEO. And it's a design firm that helped design like the first mouse, right? Like this is an innovation lab that has been used by Steve Jobs. Basically, it's like almost a partner, silent design company related to Apple, and they have this whole curriculum around designing applications around the user, around the person who is using this day in and day out. And so what we did was exactly their activities. We would build one small feature, we would test it, we would interview young people, we would put it in young people's hand and say, what's the biggest pain points? And at every step of the process, we've integrated not only young people, but we've integrated social workers, we've integrated biological families and foster families. Because when we say, our name is Think of Us, and when we take that seriously, and when we think of the us, it's really the collective of not only the young person, but the worker, but the bio family, the foster parent, and so on. And so we interviewed all those folks and found trends, and then we had them start playing with stuff and found trends in their behavior as they played with things. And then we started to weed things out, oh, that quickly failed, let's pivot from there, let's work with this would really resonated with people. And there were things that we just did not think of that was going to come out of it, and it did. And so those are the type of things that we did to integrate young people throughout the process. It's not about having an engagement strategy. It's about making sure that these voices are part of what you do day in and day out.
Yeah, great. What I admire about your work is that you really do focus on improving things for youth, but you realize that others in the system are coming at it with that same goal, and you include the expertise of all of those voices, which is so important. I think that is the end of our questions for now. Sixto, do you have any closing comments you want to share, any advice you'd give to youth who are coming through the system or to those who want to make a difference for them as we wrap up?
Yeah, to young people in the system, I would definitely say, it does get better, right? And remember to stop surviving and start living. And that's really hard and a hard concept to actually even tell someone that when, they have lost so much. But life can be so different when we do start to take that step back, and it's a process to get there. But take the time to grieve and take the time to actually feel that loss and take the time to heal. For the young people, for the supporters who want to support folks, my message is clear to you. Be the best supportive adult that you can. And sometimes that does mean that you have to be supportive of the ideas and the pathway that we want to go down, even though you may feel that there are other actions that are precedented and that they should be first, and you have differences in opinion. And so listening to us, not trying to solve the problem all the time, but really being there to help us talk things out and walk through us through the thick and thin is part of the process. And to those leading and those really, day in and day out making the efforts to improve the system and improve services, my message is the same as earlier, which is to lead, follow, or just get out the way.
That's great advice. If you can't make a difference, you certainly shouldn't be making waves to prevent incredibly impressive, passionate advocates like you from doing the great work you're doing. I just want to wrap up by saying you should all go to thinkof-us.org and check out the great work they're doing. Sign up for the newsletter, follow them on social media, and likewise, you can check out some of what we're doing at National Council for Adoption at adoptioncouncil.org/foster, and we'd love to have you on our social media. You can visit our website and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'd love to engage with all of you more. Thanks so much for all of you who are with us here live and all of you who dedicate the time to getting involved and listening to youth and taking action on their behalf. We know that it, as we've discussed, takes a whole community of people engaged in their lives, and we're grateful that you're interested in learning more about ways you can engage in that setting. Sixto, thank you so much again for being with us today. I know that finding an hour in your incredibly busy schedule is not easy, but we're so grateful for your time and expertise, and especially for all of the great work you're doing. Keep it up, and please do let us know how we can help to raise awareness and spread the word about the amazing work you're doing. With that, I think we will say goodbye for the afternoon. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and feel free to check out the links of the research that I mentioned on this presentation on the chat bar right there.
Yeah, he's got great stuff on the sidebar. One Simple Wish, which we talked about, coachfederation.org.
IDO.
And he shared about that Common Sense Media. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon. Thanks so much, Sixto. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hello?